A young billionaire finds two weak, hungry twin sisters begging for money at a traffic light and leaves them under the care of his 8-month pregnant wife. But when he returns from work, he's shocked to see ambulances and police cars at the door. The financial district was waking up slowly under the first light of dawn. Glass and steel buildings reflected the sky, which was gradually shifting from a deep purple to soft shades of pink and orange. The streets, which would be jam-packed with heavy rush-hour traffic in a few hours, still enjoyed an almost surreal calm. Jack Morrison watched the city transform through the tinted windows of his Range Rover as the vehicle glided silently over the asphalt, still damp from the night's rain. His fingers drummed absently on the Italian leather steering wheel, following the rhythm of a song that existed only in his memory, a lullaby his mother used to sing before life broke her into so many pieces that not even a child's love was enough to mend her. At 28 years old, Jack carried the weight of his achievements with a studied elegance. His custom Brioni suit concealed a physique kept rigorously fit, not out of vanity but from an almost obsessive need for control over his body, his mind, his destiny. His green eyes, which business magazines usually described as penetrating or calculating, held a depth that few truly managed to understand. The Patek Philippe watch on his wrist showed 6:43 a.m. He still had time before the board meeting. Enough time for his morning ritual, a carefully brewed coffee at the newly opened La Colombe, a brief walk through the hanging gardens at his office, perhaps even a few minutes of meditation, a habit his therapist insisted was essential to keep the nightmares at bay. The nightmares. They had returned the previous night, more vivid than ever. In the dream, he was 8 years old again. The smell of cheap whiskey filled the air of the small apartment where he grew up. Frank's voice, his stepfather, echoed through the thin walls, each word a promise of violence. The metallic sound of coins dropping from the mattress where he tried to hide them. A distant honk pulled him back to the present. The light ahead was red. Jack took a deep breath, adjusting his posture. His eyes automatically scanned the rearview mirrors, another old habit too, born from years of living in a constant state of alert. That's when he saw them. At first, he thought it was a hallucination brought on by fatigue. Two small figures moved between the stopped cars, like dawn phantoms. He blinked a few times, but the vision remained. They were two girls, identical twins. They couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. Their dresses, which had clearly seen better days, were stained and torn at the edges. Their blonde hair, uncut and tangled, framed faces seemingly sculpted by hunger itself, cheeks too hollow, eyes too large, as if their bodies had been forced to consume their own childhood just to survive. One of them, the one who seemed to carry an invisible weight on her shoulders, held a rusty tin can where a few coins clinked sadly. The other stayed half a step behind, like a frightened shadow, her eyes constantly moving as though she expected danger to appear from any direction at any moment. Jack felt something twist in his chest, an old, familiar pain, like a scar that never fully healed. His hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough for his knuckles to whiten. "Mister!" The voice was so fragile that for a moment he thought he'd imagined it. "Can you help us?" The twin with the can was now beside his window. Seen up close, she looked even smaller, even more fragile. Her huge blue eyes, set in a face far too small, held a disconcerting mix of fear and hope. "What are your names?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle, controlled, as if speaking to a scared wild animal. "Emily," replied the one holding the can. Then, after an almost imperceptible hesitation, "And she's Olivia. Olivia. Emily." The names seemed incongruously delicate for children who clearly knew the darker side of life. Jack noticed how Emily positioned herself slightly in front of her sister, like a miniature human shield. The way Olivia shrank back at the slightest sound, the yellowish bruise along Olivia's skinny arm, partly covered by the torn sleeve of her dress. His eyes, trained from years of negotiations, picked up other details. How both kept their shoulders tense, ready to run at the first sign of threat. How their eyes constantly scanned beyond the cars, as if afraid someone might be watching. Following their gaze, Jack saw him. A man leaning against a distant lamppost, half hidden by the lingering shadows of dawn. Even from that distance, his hostile stance was clear. A bottle hung loosely from his hand. His stained t-shirt and worn jeans told a story of neglect and decay. But it was his eyes that caught Jack's attention, glazed, bloodshot, fixed on the girls with a predatory intensity that made Jack's blood boil. "Are you hungry?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The twins exchanged a quick glance, one of those silent communications only twins seem able to share. Emily nodded timidly, her fingers gripping the can more tightly. "When was the last time you ate something real?" "Bob brought us bread yesterday," Emily murmured, her voice shrinking at the mention of the name. Olivia visibly flinched, as if just the sound of the name was enough to hurt her. Jack felt a surge of rage so intense he had to take several deep breaths to maintain control. He recognized that reaction. He knew that visceral fear that made the entire body recoil at the sound of a name. Frank had left the same kind of mark on him. More horns blared outside. The light had turned green again. Jack turned on the hazard lights and pulled the car over to the curb, ignoring the annoyed gestures of other drivers. "Listen," he said, keeping his voice firm but kind. "I know you're not supposed to accept help from strangers, but I live close by in a big house. My wife is there, she's pregnant. She's probably making a delicious breakfast right now. You can take a hot bath, have a proper meal, get some rest." The offer hung in the air like a soap bubble, fragile, delicate, full of possibility. The twins exchanged glances again, and Jack could almost see the thoughts passing between them. Fear, distrust, hope. A hunger that went far beyond the physical. "Bob's gonna be mad," Olivia spoke for the first time, her voice so low it was almost a sigh. Jack looked again at the man near the lamppost. Bob had moved a few steps forward, his posture tense like a predator about to strike. Even from a distance, the anger in his eyes was palpable. "He won't hurt you anymore," Jack promised, and there was something in his voice, an absolute certainty, born from his own scars, that made the girls believe him. Never again. The moment that followed seemed to stretch out forever. Emily squeezed Olivia's hand, their tiny fingers interlaced like branches of a young tree seeking strength against the storm. Then, with a courage that broke Jack's heart, she nodded. "Okay." Jack quickly got out of the car, moving deliberately, slowly and calmly so as not to scare them. He opened the back door, watching as Emily guided Olivia inside, never letting go of her hand. The car's luxurious interior seemed absurdly opulent next to their shabby clothes. The Range Rover pulled away from the traffic light smoothly, leaving behind only the morning dust and a furious, solitary figure on the sidewalk. In the back seat, the twins clung to each other in silence, like castaways holding onto a piece of driftwood in a stormy ocean. Through the rearview mirror, Jack observed their every reaction, how their eyes widened at each increasingly imposing building they passed, the way their small hands gripped one another tighter at every turn, the mix of fear and fascination on their faces when the car finally passed through the ornate wrought-iron gates of his property. The mansion's garden, meticulously tended by a team of landscapers, still glistened with morning dew. An Italian marble fountain murmured softly in the center of the circular driveway, its crystal waters shimmering under the now brighter sun. Climbing roses in full bloom covered part of the Georgian facade, their pink and red hues creating a dramatic contrast with the lightstone. Sarah was at the door before the engine had fully stopped. Her floral dress flowed gently around her 8-month pregnant figure, and her red hair slipped from a hastily done bun, forming a golden halo around her face in the morning light. Her green eyes, so much like Jack's, widened slightly at the sight of the small figures hesitantly getting out of the car. For a moment no one moved. The only sounds were the gentle murmur of the fountain and the occasional birdsong in the nearby trees. Sarah looked from Jack to the girls, then back to Jack, an unspoken conversation passing between them. Then, as if she'd made a decision, her face lit up with a welcoming smile. "Hi," she said softly, her voice carrying a gentle southern accent that years in high society hadn't completely erased. "You must be hungry. I just made pancakes with chocolate syrup and fresh strawberries. Would you like to try them?" The girls' stomachs answered before their mouths could, prompting a small nervous laugh from Emily. Even Olivia, still partly hiding behind her sister, offered a timid smile. Sarah held out a hand to Emily, who, after a moment's hesitation, accepted it. Olivia followed, still clinging to her sister, her wide eyes taking in every detail of the place that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Jack watched them enter, their tiny, hesitant steps leaving invisible footprints on the immaculate marble floor. Sarah was already speaking to them softly, her gentle voice echoing through the entrance hall, explaining about the pancakes, asking if they liked chocolate, promising to show them their rooms after breakfast. He stayed outside for a moment, breathing in the fresh morning air, letting the reality of what he'd just done settle in his mind. His phone weighed heavily in his jacket pocket. There were many calls to make. His lawyers would need to be informed, social services contacted, security reinforced. He knew that what he was doing was technically illegal, but there were moments when the law and justice took different paths. From the kitchen, he could hear Sarah's soft voice mingling with the clink of cutlery. Then, unexpectedly, a laugh. A small, hesitant laugh, but undeniably real. The sound was so pure, so surprising, that it broke and rebuilt something inside Jack at the same time. As he dialed the first number on his phone, his eyes instinctively scanned the distant gates. Somewhere out there, he knew Bob was watching, planning. But for the first time in a long while, Jack felt no fear. He had enough power now to make a difference, to keep history from repeating itself. The sun now fully lit the garden, its golden rays chasing away the last shadows of dawn. In the kitchen, he could hear Sarah patiently explaining to the girls how to pour just the right amount of chocolate syrup on their pancakes. Such a simple, ordinary task, yet loaded with deep meaning, the first step toward a new life. Another laugh rang out, more confident this time, followed by Sarah's soft voice. Jack felt something warm and heavy in his chest. Those girls deserved more than just to survive. They deserved to live, and he would do everything in his power to ensure that the day was only beginning, and with it a new story was about to unfold. A story of redemption, second chances, and old scars that perhaps, finally, might truly begin to heal. As he walked toward the house, Jack thought of his mother, of how she used to say that sometimes angels show up in the most unlikely places. That morning, at an ordinary traffic light in the financial district, he finally understood what she meant. The private elevator in the Morrison Tower ascended silently through the 60 floors of the skyscraper. Jack watched his distorted reflection in the chrome panel, noticing small chocolate stains on the sleeves of his Italian suit, traces of the improvised breakfast with the twins. Emily had spilled the chocolate syrup when she tried to hand it to Olivia, her small hands shaking under the weight of the container. That moment of almost domestic normalcy now seemed surreal, like a dream dissolving under the cold light of corporate reality. His phone buzzed in his pocket for the 10th time that morning, another message from his assistant, reminding him of the shareholders' meeting. The elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse office. The panoramic view of the city stretched out through floor-to-ceiling windows, but Jack hardly noticed. His thoughts were on the two small figures he'd left at his mansion, and on the man who was surely looking for them. Mr. Morrison? Amanda, his executive assistant for 5 years, was already waiting with a stack of documents and her usual expression of professional efficiency. The board is gathered in the conference room. They've been waiting for 20 minutes. Jack nodded absently, setting his briefcase on the massive mahogany desk. Amanda, I need you to make some urgent calls. Contact the State Social Services Office. I also want to speak to our legal department and... Sir, Amanda interrupted gently, the board is discussing the merger with TechCore. It's the most important meeting of the quarter. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of his corporate responsibilities colliding with his recent personal decision. The TechCore merger was a $2.3 billion deal. Hundreds of jobs depended on its success. 5 minutes, he said finally. Give me 5 minutes and I'll be there. As soon as Amanda left, Jack grabbed the phone and dialed the social services number. After 15 minutes of transfers and hold music, he finally reached a representative who seemed more interested in her lunch break than in the case of 2 children in danger. Sir, we need a formal report. There are procedures to follow. Are you a relative of the miners? Do you have any documents for them? We need concrete proof of abuse." The representative's monotone voice was interrupted by another urgent message from Amanda. The board was growing impatient. Jack hung up the phone, frustrated. In his mind, flashes of the morning mingled with present concerns. The bruise on Olivia's arm. Emily placing herself protectively in front of her sister, the fear in their eyes at the slightest noise. "Jack," Richard Chen, his CFO, called from the doorway. "Everything okay? The board is—" "I'm on my way," Jack replied, standing and adjusting his tie. The conference room was packed. 15 of the most powerful executives in the country awaited his presentation on the merger. Screens displayed graphs, financial projections, market analyses. Jack began his presentation automatically. Years of experience allowed the words to flow, even as his mind wandered. "As you can see on slide 23, the synergy between our companies." "Bob's gonna be mad," Olivia's soft voice echoed in his mind. "Will result in projected cost savings of 140 million in the first year." Bob's predatory gaze watching the girls from across the street. "And our market share will increase significantly," Emily clutching the rusty can with her trembling little hands. "Jack?" Chen's voice pulled him back to reality. "Are you okay? You seem distracted." Jack realized he had stopped talking mid-sentence. 15 pairs of eyes watched him, with expressions ranging from concern to irritation. "Sorry," he quickly recovered. "As I was saying, the meeting dragged on for 3 hours. When it finally ended, Jack rushed back to his office, ignoring the curious looks from his executives. He checked his phone, 15 missed calls from his lawyers and a message from the security team. "Amanda!" he called, but his assistant was already entering with another pile of documents. "Sir, the legal department is online too. We have a video conference with Tokyo in 20 minutes and—" "Cancel everything," Jack ordered, surprising even himself. "Reschedule my agenda for tomorrow." "But sir, the merger—" "Tomorrow," he repeated firmly. "There's something more important I need to handle today." As he gathered his belongings, Jack didn't notice the exchanged glances between his employees or the whispers that spread through the corridors about his unusual behavior. His mind was solely focused on getting back home, on making sure the twins were safe. But while Jack dealt with his worries atop his corporate tower, in a less affluent part of the city, Bob staggered out of a seedy bar, his bloodshot eyes fixed in the direction of the neighborhood where he had seen the Range Rover disappear that morning. With a bottle of cheap whiskey in one hand and growing hatred in his heart, he set out on his determined walk. It wouldn't be hard to find out where that kind of car had stopped, and when he found it, well, Bob had always known how to handle people who tried to take what was his. The afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting elongated shadows between the skyscrapers. In his office, Jack finally managed to get hold of his lawyers. Words like temporary custody and restraining order floated through the air-conditioned room, mixing with the aroma of expensive coffee and the gravity of decisions that would change several lives forever. The workday at the office was coming to an end, but the real battle was just beginning. Sarah watched the twins hesitantly pick at the last bits of pancake on their plates. The kitchen, normally a place of silent solitude in her mornings, was now filled with the soft clink of cutlery and the occasional whispers exchanged between the girls. Emily, the braver of the two, occasionally threw curious glances at Sarah, while Olivia kept her eyes on her plate, as if afraid the food would vanish if she looked away. A mild contraction made Sarah shift in her chair. At 8 months pregnant, her body was constantly reminding her of the changes to come. But at that moment, her full attention was on the 2 small figures in front of her. "Would you like a warm bath?" she asked softly, noticing the dark stains on dresses that must have once been white. "I have some clean clothes that might fit you." The twins exchanged a quick glance. That silent communication Sarah was already starting to recognize. Emily nodded timidly, while Olivia clutched the edge of the table with her little fingers. "It could be a bathtub bath," Sarah added with a gentle smile. "I even have some rubber duckies." The mention of duckies brought out the first genuine smile from Olivia since their arrival. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The main bathroom in the master suite was bigger than many apartments. A standalone Victorian tub dominated the space, its golden faucets gleaming under the natural light spilling through tall windows. Sarah turned on the water, testing the temperature on her wrist, like her mother had taught her for babies. "It's warm, but not too hot," she explained, pouring in a generous amount of lavender-scented bubble bath. "You can both get in together if you'd like." Again, that exchange of looks. Emily agreed with a nod, but when Sarah came closer to help them with their clothes, both girls instinctively flinched. "It's okay," Sarah stepped back, keeping her voice calm despite the pain she felt at their reaction. "You can undress on your own. I'll just stay nearby in case you need help." As the girls awkwardly removed their dirty dresses, Sarah had to stifle a horrified gasp. Their small bodies told a story of neglect and cruelty no words could fully describe. Bruises of various stages covered their pale skin, some recent purple and swollen, others yellowed and slowly fading. On their backs, thin long marks suggested belt lashes. Olivia had a particularly disturbing scar near her right shoulder, as if something hot had been pressed against her skin. Sarah felt her stomach twist, and it wasn't just the pregnancy. The twins stepped into the tub together, still wearing their underwear, their movements cautious like wild animals approaching unfamiliar water. But once they felt the comforting warmth of the scented bubbles, something in their posture began to relax. Sarah picked up a yellow rubber duck and gently placed it in the water. "This is Mr. Quack," she introduced in a slightly playful voice. "He loves making new friends." Emily was the first to touch the toy, her fingers tentatively brushing against the plastic surface. When the duck made its characteristic quack, both girls jumped a little in surprise, then let out nervous giggles. "Are there more?" Olivia asked so quietly that Sarah almost missed it. "Of course," Sarah replied cheerfully, reaching for a nearby basket. "We have a whole family of ducks. This is Mrs. Quack, and these are the baby ducks." Gradually, with bubbles and rubber ducks, the girls began to open up. Sarah helped wash their hair with strawberry shampoo, taking care not to let foam get in their eyes. As her gentle hands massaged their scalps, she could feel the knots, both in their hair and in the tension their small bodies carried. "My mum used to do this," Emily murmured suddenly, her eyes closed while Sarah rinsed her hair. "Before." The sentence hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Sarah waited, continuing her soft motions, giving the girls space to continue if she wanted. "Before Bob," Olivia finished, her voice trembling slightly. Sarah felt another contraction, stronger this time, but kept her face calm. "Do you remember your mother?" Emily nodded, absently playing with one of the ducks. "She would sing to us before bed. But after she went to the hospital, Bob said she wasn't coming back," Olivia interrupted, silent tears running down her cheeks. "He said she didn't want us anymore." Sarah's heart clenched. Instinctively, she leaned forward, ignoring the discomfort in her back, and gently wiped Olivia's tears with the edge of a towel. "Sometimes," she began softly, choosing her words carefully, "adults say things that aren't true, especially adults who hurt children. That doesn't make them right. It makes them wrong, twice over." The twins looked at her with an intensity that broke her heart. There was so much pain in those young eyes, so much early understanding of life's darker side. "Now," Sarah continued, forcing a lighter tone into her voice, "how about we drain this water that's getting cold and get you into some warm, clean clothes?" After their bath, dressed in soft pajamas Sarah had bought to donate, and for some reason never did, the twins looked different. Their clean, untangled hair framed their faces like golden halos, and there was a softness in their expressions that hadn't been there before. In the kitchen, Sarah began preparing lunch, determined to offer something more substantial than pancakes. While she chopped vegetables for a nutritious soup, she kept an eye on the girls, who now sat on the stools at the kitchen island, watching her every move in fascination. "Do you want to help me?" she asked, placing some carrots and a cutting board in front of them. "You can sort the carrot pieces into equal piles." It was a simple task, but the girls tackled it with touching seriousness. Emily arranged the carrots methodically, while Olivia counted the pieces under her breath, making sure each pile had the same number. "Mum used to let us help her too," Emily commented after a few minutes of focused silence. "She made soup when it was cold." "Really?" Sarah encouraged gently. "What was your favorite soup?" "Pumpkin soup," they answered in unison, then looked at each other, surprised, before bursting into giggles. The afternoon passed at a gentle pace, marked by small moments of discovery and connection. Sarah taught the girls how to make simple butter cookies, laughing when they got covered in flour. She showed them the backyard garden, where a double swing hanging from a centuries-old oak made them gasp in awe. As she watched them timidly use the swings, their laughter blending with the birdsong, Sarah felt another contraction, stronger than before. She checked her watch. They were regular now, but still too spaced apart to be alarming. Besides, her doctor had warned her that false contractions were common at this stage of pregnancy. With the sun beginning to set, Sarah decided it was time to get the girls ready for bed. She led them to one of the guest rooms, closest to the master suite, decorated in soft blues and creams. "Wow," Emily whispered upon seeing the two twin beds with fluffy comforters and cozy pillows. "This is all for us?" "All for you," Sarah confirmed, helping them climb into bed. "And tomorrow, we can pick out different colors if you'd like. We can make this room feel more like yours." As she tucked them in, Sarah noticed how small they looked in those big beds, like tiny birds that had fallen from the nest. Olivia clutched a rubber duck Sarah had let her keep, while Emily kept a hand extended across the gap between the beds, holding her sister's hand. "Do you want me to read you a story?" Sarah offered, noticing a shelf of children's books in the corner, leftovers from her own childhood that her mother had sent when she found out Sarah was pregnant. The girls nodded eagerly. Sarah chose Where the Wild Things Are, a story about fears, courage, and the power of unconditional love. As she read, her gentle voice filling the room with magic and possibility, she watched the girls' eyelids grow heavier and heavier. By the time the story ended, both were almost asleep. Sarah softly kissed their foreheads, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. "Good night, my little ones," she whispered, heading for the door. "Sarah?" Olivia's sleepy voice made her stop. "Will you be here when we wake up?" The question, so simple yet so loaded with meaning, caused something inside Sarah to tighten, and this time it wasn't a contraction. "I promise," she answered firmly. "Now sleep. You're safe here." Leaving the door ajar and a soft light on in the hallway, Sarah headed toward her own room. Another contraction made her pause. Stronger than the previous ones, maybe she should call Jack just to be safe. That's when she noticed movement in the garden. Through the hallway window, she saw a shadow moving among the distant trees, beyond the property line. For a moment, her heart stopped. The staggering figure of a man briefly appeared under one of the garden lamps before disappearing again into the shadows. Even from a distance, there was something disturbingly familiar about his erratic movements. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Instinctively, one hand went to her belly while the other fumbled for her phone. But before she could dial any number, another contraction, stronger than all the others, made her gasp. In the nearby bedroom, the twins slept peacefully, unaware of the shadow approaching in the darkness. Night had only just begun, and with it, a much deeper darkness was about to engulf the Morrison mansion. Sarah took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. She needed to be strong now. For them, for her baby, for all of them. The last light of day finally vanished on the horizon, leaving only the dancing shadows of the garden shrubs, where a solitary figure waited patiently, his rage growing with each swig from the nearly empty bottle in his hand. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the mansion like a gunshot in the night. Sarah, who was in the second-floor hallway trying to control another contraction, froze. For one terrible moment, the silence that followed felt even more frightening than the noise. Then she heard it, heavy, irregular footsteps, the scraping of furniture, a harsh, drunken breath. "Where are they?" The rough, furious voice reverberated through the walls. "I know they're here." Sarah's heart raced. Her hands instinctively went to her belly, where her baby was moving restlessly, as if sensing the danger. She recognized that voice. It was the same that had made Olivia shrink back at the mention of Bob earlier. "Emily! Olivia!" The shout was followed by the sound of something heavy being knocked over downstairs. Sarah moved silently to the twins' bedroom. or where they should have been sleeping. The beds were empty, the sheets tossed aside. For a moment of panic, she thought Bob had found them already, but then she noticed the slightly open closet door. "Girls," she whispered, approaching carefully. Two pairs of terrified eyes glinted in the darkness of the closet. The twins were huddled together, trembling, Olivia still clutching the rubber duck so tightly her knuckles were white. "Stay here," Sarah instructed, her voice firm despite the fear threatening to choke her. "Don't make a sound, no matter what happens. I promise I won't let him hurt you." More sounds of destruction drifted up from downstairs. Sarah closed the closet door and then, on impulse, silently dragged the heavy dresser in front of it. It wouldn't stop Bob completely if he reached the room, but it would buy the girls a few precious extra seconds. Another contraction hit her, so strong that she had to lean against the wall. This was not the time for this. Not now. "I know you're here." Bob's voice was closer now, the sound of steps on the stairs. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped out into the hallway, closing the bedroom door behind her. Her eyes scanned the corridor, assessing her options. A phone. She needed to call for help, but her cell was in the master bedroom on the other side of the hall. Before she could move, Bob appeared at the top of the stairs. Even in the dim light, he was a terrifying sight. Tall and burly, he staggered slightly, a nearly empty bottle dangling from one hand. His face was contorted into a mask of alcoholic rage, and there were dark stains on his t-shirt, blood from cuts likely caused by breaking the window. "Where are they, you bitch?" he snarled, coming closer. "Those brats are mine." Sarah lifted her chin, forcing herself to appear calmer than she felt. "Get out of my house now, or I'm calling the police." Bob laughed, a harsh, cruel sound that raised the hairs on the back of Sarah's neck. "Police? You think I'm scared of the police?" He took another step forward, the stench of alcohol and sweat reaching her. "Those girls belong to me. A judge gave me custody. That's the law." "They're children," Sarah retorted, her voice trembling with anger. "Not property. And you're never going to touch them again." Bob's smile vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous. "Who do you think you are, you stuck-up rich woman? Think you can steal what's mine?" He lunged suddenly, faster than his drunken state suggested possible. Sarah tried to dodge, but another contraction caught her off guard. Bob's hand grabbed her arm with brutal force. "Where are they?" he screamed in her face, shaking her. Sarah felt nauseated by the smell of alcohol on his breath. "Let go of me!" She tried to break free, but Bob slammed her violently against the wall. Her head hit the drywall hard enough to make stars dance across her vision. A sharp pain shot through her back. "Last chance!" Bob roared, his face inches from hers. "Where are the girls?" Sarah spat in his face. For a moment, Bob seemed stunned. Then, with a roar of anger, he threw her to the floor. Sarah managed to partially shield her belly on the way down, but she still felt the impact reverberate through her entire body. "I'll find them myself," Bob muttered, kicking her as he passed. "And when I find them—" Sarah swallowed a scream of pain. Through the haze of agony threatening to engulf her, she saw Bob begin checking the doors along the hallway, kicking them open violently one by one. No, she couldn't let him reach the girls. Ignoring the searing pain in her back and the contraction ripping her body in two, Sarah forced herself to stand. Her legs trembled, and something warm trickled down her temple. Blood. Bob was at the third door now. Only two more before he reached the twins' room. Sarah frantically looked around for something to use as a weapon. Her eyes fell on a heavy crystal vase on a nearby table, a wedding gift she'd always found horribly tacky. Grabbing it with both hands, she staggered toward Bob just as he opened the fourth door. "Hey!" she yelled. When he turned, Sarah smashed the vase into his face with all the strength she could muster. The vase exploded into thousands of glittering shards. Bob stumbled backward, blood gushing from his broken nose. "You bitch!" he bellowed, lunging at her again. Sarah tried to run, but her legs wouldn't respond. Bob seized her by the hair, dragging her down the hallway. She fought back, scratching and kicking, but each movement sent waves of pain through her body. "No more games," he growled, pinning her against the wall with an arm across her throat. "Where are they?" Sarah couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in her vision. Her baby was thrashing wildly inside her. Another contraction hit, stronger than ever. Then she heard it. A small sob coming from the room next door. The smile that spread across Bob's bloody face was the most terrifying thing Sarah had ever seen. "Found them," he whispered, releasing her. Sarah collapsed to the floor, coughing and choking, desperately trying to draw air. Bob was already at the bedroom door, turning the handle. "No," she tried to shout, but her voice came out as a hoarse whisper. The door opened. Bob entered, kicking furniture aside. Sarah heard the sound of the dresser being dragged, followed by terrified screams. "No!" This time her voice came out, a scream that tore at her throat. "Leave them alone!" Summoning strength she didn't know she had, Sarah got up and staggered into the room. Bob was standing before the open closet, his huge hands clutching the twins' delicate arms as they struggled and screamed. "Shut up!" He shook the girls violently. "You're coming with me now!" "No!" Emily screamed, trying to pull free. "We don't want to go!" "Sarah!" Olivia cried, reaching out for her. "Help!" Sarah never knew exactly where the strength came from. Maybe it was maternal instinct manifesting early. Maybe it was adrenaline. Or maybe it was pure fury at seeing this monster hurting two innocent children. She hurled herself at Bob with all her weight, slamming into his back. The impact made him stumble forward, loosening his grip on the girls. Emily managed to free herself and immediately grabbed Olivia's hand, trying to pull her away. Bob recovered quickly, spinning around and striking Sarah with a blow that made her see stars. She fell but clung to his leg, preventing him from advancing. "Run!" she yelled at the twins. "Run now!" Emily dragged Olivia toward the door, but Bob grabbed Olivia's hair, yanking her back. "You're mine!" he roared in the child's face. "My property!" Olivia's terrified scream seemed to trigger something primal in Sarah. Ignoring the excruciating pain racking her body, she dragged herself to the fallen dresser and grabbed a broken piece of it. In one swift motion, she drove the sharp wood into Bob's leg. The roar of pain he let out was almost inhuman. He released Olivia, who ran to her sister. Bob turned to Sarah, his eyes now wild with fury. "I'm gonna kill you," he growled, advancing on her. "I'll kill you and that bastard in your belly!" Sarah tried to crawl backward, but another contraction hit, this one the most intense yet. The pain was different now, more urgent. Something was wrong. Bob grabbed her by the neck, lifting her off the floor. Sarah kicked and thrashed, but her strength was failing. Through her darkening vision, she saw the twins standing in the doorway, frozen in terror. "Run," she managed to whisper. "Please, run." Somewhere, far away, she heard sirens. Bob heard them too. His grip loosened slightly. That was all Sarah needed. Summoning her last reserve of strength, she slammed her knee upward, hitting Bob between the legs. He dropped her with a groan of pain. Staggering back, Sarah fell to the floor, coughing and gasping. Her vision blurred, but she saw the twins finally running out of the room. Bob was recovering, his eyes fixed on her with murderous rage. "It's over," she said, her voice hoarse but resolute. "You'll never hurt them again." Bob roared with anger and lunged at her, but he tripped over his own feet, still impacted by the alcohol and pain. Sarah rolled aside, narrowly avoiding the fist that crashed to the floor where her head had been. The sirens were closer now. Red and blue lights began to dance on the walls through the windows. "No!" Bob shouted, stumbling toward the door. "They're mine! Mine!" Sarah tried to stand, but a different kind of pain tore through her. Not a contraction this time, but something more urgent, more final. She felt warm fluid running down her legs. Her baby, no, not now. The heavy footsteps on the stairs indicated Bob was chasing the twins. Sarah could hear the girls screaming from downstairs. Ignoring the pain threatening to split her in two, she started crawling toward the door. She couldn't give up now, not when the girls still needed her. The night was far from over, and Sarah knew the next few moments would decide the fate of everyone in that house. The sirens were deafening now, and authoritative voices rang out from outside. But inside the mansion, the terror continued, echoing through the corridors like a nightmare no one could wake from. Sarah took a deep breath, gathering the last of her strength. The girls needed her. Her baby needed her, and she wasn't about to give up. Not now, not ever. With a cry born of both pain and determination, Sarah Morrison forced herself to stand. The battle wasn't over yet, and she was determined to ensure it ended the right way. Even if it cost her own life. The red and blue lights of the patrol cars turned the pristine garden of the Morrison mansion into a surreal kaleidoscope. The wail of sirens ripped through the night, echoing off the walls of the property as 3 police cars screeched up the driveway, closely followed by an ambulance. "Police! Freeze!" The amplified voice boomed across the grounds. "Let go of the children and put your hands where we can see them." Bob was in the middle of the living room, one hand gripping Olivia's arm with brutal force while he tried to grab Emily, who had managed to partially hide behind an overturned couch. His face was covered in blood from his broken nose, his eyes bloodshot and darting between the windows illuminated by police lights. "Get out!" he bellowed, yanking Olivia closer, using her like a shield. "They're mine. It's the law." The girl cried silently, her small body trembling violently. Emily, from her hiding spot, was sobbing, still trying to reach her sister. Armed police officers began to enter through the front and back doors, their flashlights cutting through the darkness of the room. "Let the girl go now." At the top of the stairs, Sarah leaned heavily against the wall, one hand on her belly as waves of pain racked her. Blood dripped down her face from the cut on her temple, and her knees threatened to buckle at any moment. "Please," she managed, her voice raspy. "He's going to hurt them." Bob whirled around at the sound of her voice, dragging Olivia with him. "This, all your fault. You and your rich husband think you can steal what's mine." 2 police officers used his brief distraction to move in. Bob noticed and lashed out wildly, hurling Olivia aside. She fell, striking her head against the corner of the coffee table. "Olivia!" Emily's scream tore through the chaos. It was as if time froze for a moment. Olivia lay motionless on the floor, a thin stream of blood trickling down her forehead. Emily ran to her, forgetting the danger. Bob tried to grab her, but 3 police officers tackled him at once. The struggle that followed was brutal. Fueled by alcohol and rage, Bob fought like a wild animal, knocking over more furniture and breaking even more objects. 2 officers were thrown backward before they finally managed to pin him down. "Let me go! I'll kill you all! They're mine!" Sarah tried to go down the stairs, desperate to reach the girls, but her legs finally gave out. The last thing she saw before her vision darkened was the paramedics rushing in through the door, their white uniforms bright under the flashing lights. Ma'am, can you hear me?" A female voice seemed to come from far away. "She's in labor. We need a second ambulance now." The living room of the Morrison mansion, normally a symbol of elegance and order, now resembled a war zone. Broken furniture and bloodstains marked the Italian marble floor. Bob continued struggling as officers tried to handcuff him, his screams echoing off the walls. "Call social services," one of the officers yelled, seeing Emily clinging to her sister's unconscious body, refusing to let the paramedics near. "No," she sobbed. "I won't let you take her. You promised we'd stay together." A middle-aged woman in a blazer and jeans cautiously approached. "Hi, Emily," she said softly, crouching at a safe distance. "My name's Sandra. I know you're scared, but we need to help your sister. You want her to get better, don't you?" Emily lifted her tear-stained, grimy face. "You're not going to separate us." "No, sweetheart," Sandra promised. "You'll stay together. But right now we need to take care of Olivia, okay?" Slowly, reluctantly, Emily allowed the paramedics to approach. They worked quickly, checking Olivia's vitals and stabilizing her neck as a precaution. On the other side of the room, more paramedics worked on Sarah, who had regained partial consciousness but was still disoriented. "BP is 90/60 and dropping," one reported. "Contractions every 3 minutes. Possible placental abruption." "You bastards," Bob was still shouting as he was practically carried outside. "I'll sue all of you. They're mine by law." It was at that moment that the headlights of a Range Rover lit up the mansion's entrance. The car had barely stopped when Jack leapt out, his face a mask of horror as he took in the scene before him. "Sarah!" He ran toward his wife, but a police officer stopped him. "Sir, I need you to remain calm. I'm the owner of this house. That's my wife." "Jack!" Sarah's weak voice made him push past the officer. He dropped to his knees beside her, taking her blood-stained hand in his. My God, Sarah, I'm sorry, I should have been here. The girls, she whispered, another contraction twisting her face in pain. Keep them safe. We have to move her now, one of the paramedics cut in. The baby's in distress. As they carried Sarah out to the ambulance, Emily let out a cry that seemed to contain all the pain and fear of that terrible night. The sound shot through the chaos like an arrow, hitting Jack square in the chest. "Uncle Jack!" She ran to him, clutching at his legs. "Olivia, he hurt her!" Jack picked her up, his eyes darting to where the paramedics were working on Olivia. The girl was being placed on a stretcher, a cervical collar around her delicate neck and an oxygen mask covering part of her pale face. "She'll be okay," he promised, though his heart was breaking. "We'll all be okay." Sandra, the social worker, approached gently. "Mr. Morrison, we need you to come with us to the hospital. There are formalities." "I'm not leaving them," Jack interrupted, still holding Emily. "Never again." Outside, Bob was being put into the patrol car, still screaming threats and profanities. His bloodied face appeared occasionally in the pulsing lights, like a demon from a nightmare. "This isn't over," he shouted one last time before the patrol car door slammed shut. "You'll see, they're mine." Emily shrank into Jack's arms, burying her face in his neck. He held her tighter, feeling her small body tremble. "He'll never touch you again," Jack whispered, kissing the top of her head. "I promise." The two ambulances left one after the other, sirens piercing the night. Jack followed in his own car, Emily still in his arms, refusing to sit in the booster seat Sandra offered. The social worker eventually agreed to hold her during the ride, understanding the child had already been through enough trauma for one night. As the improvised convoy headed for the hospital, the first rays of sunlight began to emerge on the horizon. The night of terror was ending, but its consequences were only beginning to unfold. Back at the Morrison mansion, police were starting their investigation, photographing the destruction and collecting evidence. Bloodstains on walls and furniture told the silent story of the violence that had taken place. The girl's bedroom, which just hours earlier had been a sanctuary of peace and hope, was now in ruins. Olivia's rubber duck lay broken in a corner, a tragic symbol of innocence violated. Yet amidst the chaos and destruction, small signs of hope remained. The book, Where the Wild Things Are, was still open on the bedside table, its pages whispering promises that even the worst monsters could be defeated, and that sometimes it's in the darkest nights that we find our true strength. The battle was over, but the war for the twins' safety and happiness was just beginning. This time, however, they would not face it alone. The corridors of Metropolitan Hospital seemed endless as Jack rushed alongside the gurney carrying Sarah. The sound of its wheels on the vinyl floor blended with the beeping of monitors and the urgent voices of doctors. "Blood pressure still dropping," one of the paramedics announced as they ran. "Contractions every 2 minutes. Moderate bleeding." Sarah was paler than the hospital sheets, her red hair stained with blood providing a startling contrast. Her eyes opened and closed, fighting to remain conscious. "Jack," she murmured, searching for his hand. "The girls. They're being taken care of," he squeezed her hand gently. "You need to focus now. Our baby needs you." A particularly strong contraction made Sarah arch on the gurney, a moan of pain escaping her battered lips. Jack felt his heart clench. How had he left her alone? How hadn't he sensed something was wrong? "Mr. Morrison." A nurse stopped him as they reached the double doors of the surgical unit. "I need you to wait here while we prep your wife." "No." Sarah gripped Jack's hand with surprising strength. "Stay with me." "Mrs. Morrison." Dr. Chen, the obstetrician, approached quickly. "The baby is in distress. We need to perform an emergency C-section. Your husband can come in as soon as we're ready." Jack leaned down, kissing Sarah's forehead. "I'll be right here. I promise." As Sarah was taken into the surgical unit, Jack felt his legs weaken. He leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, trying to contain the whirlwind of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Mr. Morrison?" A gentle voice brought him back. It was Sandra, the social worker. "I thought you'd like to know. Olivia is in the pediatric ER. The CT scan showed no skull fractures, but they want to keep her for observation because of a concussion. And Emily. She's with her. We couldn't separate them. Sandra gave a small, tired smile. She refuses to let go of her sister's hand. Jack nodded, tears burning his eyes. The sound of hurried footsteps made him turn around. A nurse was back with a set of sterilized scrubs. Mr. Morrison, we can get you prepped now. The next few minutes were a blur of mechanical actions, putting on the gown, covering his hair with a cap, washing his hands with precise, calculated movements that his mind registered but didn't fully process. When he finally entered the operating room, the scene hit him like a punch. Sarah was conscious, a blue surgical drape blocking her view of the incision site. She looked even paler under the bright lights, and monitors around her beeped with disconcerting urgency. Jack? Her voice was weak and shaky. He moved quickly to her side, sitting on the stool near her head. I'm here, sweetheart. Right here. The medical team worked rapidly on the other side of the drape. Jack could hear technical terms being exchanged, but his focus was entirely on Sarah's face. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered, tears escaping the corners of her eyes. I tried to protect them. Shh, Jack wiped her tears with his thumb. You were incredible. You saved them. Another groan of pain escaped Sarah's lips as her eyes squeezed shut. In her mind, flashes of the fight with Bob mingled with the present reality, hitting the wall, the searing pain in her back, the stench of alcohol on his breath. BP dropping, someone announced. We need to speed this up. The girls screaming. The sound of the vase shattering. Blood on her hands. Almost there, Dr. Chen announced. Get the incubator ready. Sarah tightened her grip on Jack's hand. Don't let them take the girls, she pleaded, her mind drifting between present and past. Promise. No one's taking them, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. Never again. A sudden hush fell over the room, followed by the most precious and terrifying sound Jack had ever heard, the first cry of his baby. Weak, more of a protest than a cry, but still a sign of life. It's a boy, Dr. Chen announced. We need to take him to the NICU immediately. Jack caught only a glimpse of a tiny bluish body being whisked away by a team of nurses. His son. So small, so fragile. Jack? Sarah's voice was fading. Go. With him. The monitors began beeping frantically. Hemorrhage, someone shouted. We need more blood here. Mr. Morrison, you have to leave now. A nurse firmly guided him toward the door. No, Sarah. We'll take care of her, the nurse promised. Your son needs you now. The next moments passed like hours. Jack found himself standing outside a glass window, watching a team of doctors work on a tiny infant inside an incubator. His son, so small he could fit in the palm of a hand. Mr. Morrison, a doctor approached, removing his mask. Your son is stable but premature. We'll keep him in the NICU for a few weeks. Fortunately, he's already 32 weeks along, which greatly improves his chances. Jack nodded mechanically, unable to tear his eyes away from the little life fighting for survival before him. And Sarah? She's still in surgery. Doctor, Chen is the best. Your wife is in good hands. Another nurse appeared in the corridor. Mr. Morrison, the girls are asking for you. Jack felt his heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. How could he split himself among so many people who needed him? Go ahead, the doctor said kindly. We'll take good care of your son. We'll let you know the moment we have news of your wife. The walk to the pediatric wing felt endless. When he finally reached the indicated room, the scene before him almost brought him to his knees. Olivia lay in bed, a bandage on her forehead, and monitors attached to her small body. Emily lay beside her, the two holding hands, sleeping fitfully. Sandra, the social worker, sat in a nearby armchair making notes on a clipboard. How are they? Jack asked in a low voice. Olivia has a mild concussion, but exams show no serious damage, Sandra replied. Emily refuses to leave her sister's side. We managed to get her to eat a little, at least. Jack approached the bed, gently adjusting the blanket over the girls. Emily stirred in her sleep, mumbling something unintelligible. Sarah? She asked without opening her eyes. She'll be okay, Jack promised, though his heart clenched with uncertainty. Rest now. The following hours became a grueling routine. Jack moved between visits to the NICU, where his son fought bravely to live, the girls' room where nightmares often woke them up screaming, and the door of the surgical unit, waiting for any news about Sarah. It was almost dawn when Dr. Chen finally appeared, looking exhausted but pleased. "She'll be fine," the doctor announced before Jack could ask. "She lost a lot of blood and will need time to recover, but she's a fighter." Jack felt his legs weaken, and he leaned against the nearest wall. "Can I see her?" "Soon. She's in recovery right now." When he was finally allowed into Sarah's room, the sun was already rising, painting the hospital sky in pinkish tones. Sarah was asleep, her face still pale but more peaceful. An oxygen tube rested under her nose, and several monitors and IV lines were attached to her arms, the only visible signs of the trauma she had endured. Jack sat beside her, taking her hand in his. How drastically life had changed in less than 24 hours. Yesterday morning, he was just a successful businessman with a pregnant wife. "Now, the girls?" Sarah asked without opening her eyes, her voice raspy and weak. "They're fine. They're sleeping. The baby, he's fighting, just like his mom." Sarah slowly opened her eyes, finding Jack's, "I'm sorry, about our wedding anniversary dinner." Jack couldn't help a choked laugh. Even after everything, she still worried about that. "I think we'll have a pretty good story to tell at future anniversaries," he said, gently kissing her forehead. "Jack." Sarah struggled to keep her eyes open. "Don't let anyone take them." "Never," he promised. "They're ours now." A faint smile appeared on Sarah's lips before she drifted off again. Jack remained there, holding her hand, watching the sun rise fully. Outside, the city began another ordinary day. But inside Metropolitan Hospital, 4 lives had been forever transformed, and a 5th, tiny and fragile, fought to join this new, makeshift family fate had brought together. The night of terror was over, but the real journey was just beginning. The glow of James's laptop filled the dimness of his office. It was 3 in the morning, but sleep was the last thing on his mind. On screen, dozens of open tabs showed police records, old news articles, and public documents, all revealing fragments of Robert Thompson's dark story. "Mr. Carter," his private investigator's voice echoed through the speakerphone, "I found a few more things you need to see." James loosened his tie, his eyes burning after hours staring at the computer screen. The twins slept in the next room, finally getting some rest after days of constant nightmares. The gentle sound of their breathing through the baby monitor was the only thing keeping him grounded in reality. "What do you have, Mike?" "It's worse than we imagined." The investigator's voice was grim. "Robert Thompson has a long record, started with minor incidents, disturbing the peace, public intoxication, but after his wife got sick." James opened the new files appearing on his screen. Police reports, hospital records, the twins' school reports. Each document a new piece of a grim puzzle. "Neighbors from the old address confirmed," Mike continued. "The girl's mother, Catherine Thompson, started showing symptoms about a year ago. No health insurance, no money for proper treatment. Robert's drinking got worse around then. The attached photos showed a beautiful woman with the same green eyes as the twins. In more recent pictures, she was thinner, paler, until she vanished from the records 6 months ago. Cause of death? Officially, complications from untreated pneumonia. In reality, no access to basic medical treatment, while her husband spent every cent on booze." James closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the drawings the twins made in therapy, always their mother lying in bed, always with a sad smile, always in green, the same shade as her eyes. "After she died," Mike went on, "things got worse fast. They lost their home. Robert lost whatever work he had left. There are records that he forced the girls to panhandle in different parts of the city. When they didn't bring back enough..." "The bruises," James murmured, recalling the marks he saw at the park. "Exactly. We have 3 statements from neighbors who tried to report it, but Robert always manipulated the situation. He moved around, used the girls as emotional leverage. The system failed them over and over." The baby monitor picked up a small whimper. James froze, waiting to see if either girl would awaken from another nightmare. The sound didn't repeat, but his heart still felt heavy. What about extended family? Catherine was an orphan raised in foster care. Robert's parents are alive but cut ties years ago due to his drinking. No close relatives who could claim custody. James opened a folder of recent photos of the twins, Emma and Emily in therapy, drawing pictures of their old family. Emma and Emily in his backyard, still wary of so much space. Emma and Emily asleep in each other's arms, as though they constantly needed to reassure each other of their presence. The child psychologist's reports just came in, Mike added after a pause. Do you want... Not now, James interrupted. He didn't need to read the details of the girl's trauma. He saw its effects every day. Fear of loud noises, hiding food, flinching whenever someone raised their voice. There's one last thing, Mike hesitated. I found records of an incident at Robert's work about 8 months before Catherine died. A serious accident involving a co-worker. Archive everything, James ordered, his mind already processing the implications. I want every detail documented, every piece of evidence preserved. The custody hearing is in 3 days. Everything's organized, sir, but can I say something personal? James murmured his agreement, eyes still on the latest photo of the twins, both asleep on the sofa in his office. A storybook opened between them. In 15 years of investigating custody cases, I've never seen kids so resilient. They survived the impossible, Mr. Carter, and now, for the first time, they have a real chance. The baby monitor picked up another sound, one of the twins quietly calling for her sister, probably after a bad dream. James was on his feet before the call ended. Thanks, Mike. Keep me posted. In the dark hallway, James paused in front of the girls' room. Through the slightly open door, he could see Emma and Emily now awake, clinging to each other as they always did after a nightmare. Their green eyes, so like their mother's in the photos, glimmered in the half-light. Uncle James? Emma's voice was just a whisper. I'm here, he replied softly, entering the room. Another bad dream. Both nodded silently. James sat on the edge of the bed, and the twins immediately huddled closer, seeking the comfort of his presence, which had already become so essential in their lives. Do you want me to read you a story? Another silent nod. James picked up the book on the bedside table, a collection of fairy tales the girls had chosen at the bookstore the day before. As he began reading, his mind still processed everything he had discovered. In 3 days, he would face the judicial system to secure custody of the twins. In 3 days, he would have to prove that a single 28-year-old billionaire could be the best guardian for 2 traumatized children. In 3 days, he would fight for the chance to give Emma and Emily the childhood they deserved. The girls snuggled closer as he read, their small bodies gradually relaxing to the sound of his voice. James knew the nightmares wouldn't vanish quickly, that the trauma would leave deep scars, that the road ahead would be long and hard. But looking at those 2 little warriors, at their unbelievable strength and their ability to still trust after all they'd been through, James knew he would do anything to protect them. His money, his power, his influence, everything he'd built in his life had finally found a greater purpose. When the story ended, James remained there, watching over the sleeping twins. Somewhere in the city, Robert Thompson was likely drowning his own memories in another bottle. In 3 days, their paths would cross again in a courtroom. But for now, in that quiet bedroom, 2 small twins with jade green eyes finally slept in peace, protected by a man whom fate had placed in their path across an abandoned park. The meeting room on the 40th floor had the best view of the city, but James barely noticed the spectacular sunset through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His attention was fixed on the 3 lawyers and the social worker sitting across from him, all studying the documents spread across the mahogany table. Mr. Carter, Sarah Miller, the social worker, adjusted her glasses as she examined another report. I understand your willingness to assume permanent custody of the girls, but I need to be clear. This won't be a simple process. James loosened his tie, feeling the weight of the past few weeks. On his phone, he saw the latest message from his housekeeper. The twins finally fell asleep. They're still asking if you'll be home soon. Margaret Dixon, the family court judge, is known for her skepticism towards single-parent adoptions, explained Richard Bennett, his lead attorney. especially in severe trauma cases like this. Not to mention, Sarah added, your age and lifestyle will come under scrutiny. A 28-year-old CEO with no prior experience with children, who offers financial stability, emotional support, and has already demonstrated commitment to the girls' well-being, James interrupted, his voice calm but firm. And, more importantly, they trust me. The silence that followed was broken by the soft rustling of papers. The investigation into Robert Thompson had uncovered a disturbing history of abuse and neglect, but it also revealed something else: the complete absence of any other relatives who might claim the twins. There's also the matter of their adjustment, Sarah continued, her voice gentler now. Emma and Emily have made remarkable progress these past weeks, but the trauma they suffered, which is why they'll continue therapy, James interrupted again. I've already arranged a full support team, child psychologists, occupational therapists, specialized tutors, whatever they need to heal and grow. Richard Bennett picked up another document. The child psychologist's report is surprisingly positive. Dr. Anderson notes a significant improvement in the girls' behavior since they started living with you. James thought of the small progress he saw each day. Emma finally agreeing to sleep with the lights off, as long as the door stayed open a crack. Emily speaking more, especially during their bedtime reading sessions. The two no longer hiding food under their pillows, starting to trust there would always be a next meal. Still, Sarah adjusted her glasses again, Judge Dixon will want long-term stability assurances. Your routine, as CEO, is already being reorganized. James opened his laptop, showing a series of emails. I've moved 80% of my meetings to video conferences. I've restructured my schedule to be home every night. I hired a COO to take over day-to-day operations. The lawyers exchanged impressed glances. Richard Bennett cleared his throat. That shows commitment, certainly, but the opposition could argue these are very recent changes. A soft alert interrupted the meeting. James's phone screen showed a photo of the twins. They'd woken up, asking for him again. His heart clenched at their worried faces. Ladies and gentlemen, James closed his laptop decisively. I appreciate your concerns and guidance, but those two girls have already experienced too many abandonments. I won't be another one on that list. Sarah Miller studied the young billionaire for a moment. She'd met many prospective adoptive parents in her career, some with the best intentions, others not so much. But James Carter was different. Perhaps it was how his eyes softened when he talked about the twins, or how he'd rearranged his entire life in a matter of weeks to meet their needs. The hearing's in 2 days. Richard Bennett began gathering the documents. We'll need... A gentle knock on the door interrupted him. James's secretary entered, looking anxious. Mr. Carter, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the girls... Before she finished, 2 small figures darted past her. Emma and Emily, still in their pajamas, froze when they saw the room full of adults. Their green eyes widened with momentary fear. Uncle James. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. James was already standing, moving toward them. The twins immediately ran to him, clinging to his legs the way they did whenever they were scared. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. The housekeeper appeared at the door, breathless. They had a nightmare, and when we said you were in a meeting, it's okay, James said, crouching to their level. Was it a bad dream? Emily nodded, hiding her face in his shoulder. Emma, always the more protective one, explained softly. We dreamed you went away like everyone else. The silence that fell over the room was heavy with meaning. Sarah Miller watched the interaction with professional interest, noting how the girls, usually so wary of adults, felt completely safe with James. Remember what we talked about? James gently pushed a stray lock of hair from Emily's face. I'm not going anywhere. You're my family now. Promise, they both asked in unison, those green eyes fixed on him with an intensity that broke his heart. I promise. James pulled them into a hug, feeling their small bodies relax in his arms. In fact, I was just talking with these grown-ups about that, about making our family official. The twins looked curiously at the others in the room, only now noticing all the papers and serious faces. Emma, always observant, asked, Official how? Like forever, James explained gently. So no one can ever separate our family. Sarah Miller cleared her throat softly, drawing the girls' attention. "Hello, Emma, Emily. You remember me? I'm Sarah, from the day at the park." The twins nodded, instinctively moving closer to James. Sarah continued in a gentle voice, "Would you two like Uncle James to be your dad forever?" The silence that followed was broken by small sobs. Emma and Emily, usually so restrained with their emotions, were now crying openly, clinging to James as though afraid he might disappear. "We do," Emily said between sobs, her usually quiet voice now clear and determined. "Please," Emma added, tears soaking James's expensive shirt. "Please let us stay." Sarah Miller closed her folder, a definite decision forming on her face. Richard Bennett and the other lawyers exchanged meaningful glances. Sometimes all the legal evidence in the world couldn't match a moment of raw emotional truth. "Well, ladies and gentlemen," Sarah stood, a slight smile on her lips, "I believe we have our answer. I'll prepare my report for Judge Dixon. And if I may offer a professional opinion, in 15 years of social work, I've never seen such a genuine bond form so quickly." James barely registered the professionals leaving the room, all his attention on the two small girls in his arms, Emma and Emily, his brave little warriors who had survived the impossible and still had the capacity to love and trust. "How about," he suggested, once their sobs started to fade, "we go get some ice cream? To celebrate?" The twins lifted their tear-stained faces, their green eyes still shimmering but now with a hint of joy. "Can we?" "Of course," James smiled, standing with a twin in each arm. "A family should celebrate together." As they walked out of the office, past surprised executives witnessing their CEO carrying two pajama-clad girls, James thought of the upcoming hearing. In 2 days, he would stand before Judge Dixon and the entire legal system to formalize what his heart already knew. Emma and Emily were his daughters in every way that mattered. The sun had completely set now, painting the sky in shades of purple beyond the skyscraper windows. But for two little girls with jade-green eyes, a new dawn was just beginning. The detention center was a gray, cold place, even on that sunny autumn morning. James adjusted his tie as he waited in the visitation room, his fingers tapping nervously on the metal table. The twins' last words still echoed in his mind. "You're going to see Daddy?" Emma had asked during breakfast, her voice small with fear and confusion. "Is he angry?" Emily added, instinctively moving closer to her sister. Now, sitting in that uncomfortable chair, James wondered for the 100th time if he was doing the right thing. The custody hearing was the next day, and all his lawyers had advised him against this visit. But something inside him knew he had to do it, not for Robert, but for the twins. The metallic clang of the door opening pulled him back to the present. Robert Thompson entered, escorted by a guard. 2 weeks of forced sobriety had altered his appearance. He was thinner, paler, his eyes no longer dulled by alcohol. He sat across the table, his hands trembling slightly. "Come to gloat, billionaire?" Robert's voice was harsh, but lacked its former aggression. "Or to brag about how you're stealing my daughters?" James kept his expression neutral, studying the man before him. "I came because I need to understand, for their sake." Robert let out a humorless laugh. "Understand? What is there to understand? I'm a worthless drunk who ruined his own family. Isn't that what your reports say?" "The reports say a lot." James took out a few photos from his suit pocket. "But I want to hear it from you." The photos made Robert pause, his sarcasm crumbling. They showed him with the twins and Catherine. Happy moments before everything fell apart. Birthdays, parks, genuine smiles. In one deet he held the newborn twins, pride shining in his eyes. Where did you get these?" "Your old neighbor saved some things for the girls," James explained softly. "Emma and Emily draw this version of you in therapy, the father they lost long before they lost their mother." Robert's trembling hands touched one of the photos. "Catherine had just braided Emily's hair," he muttered, almost to himself. "Emma got jealous, wanted the same. They always wanted everything to match." "What happened, Robert?" The silence that followed was heavy. Robert kept staring at the pictures, tears now shimmering in his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "I was a good father once, you know. A good husband. I worked hard, made sure we never lacked anything. Catherine, like she was so strong, so devoted to the girls. Even when she got sick, she kept smiling. James watched as Robert ran his fingers over the photo of his wife. Why didn't you look for help when she got ill? No insurance. I lost my benefits when the factory downsized. Robert swallowed. We tried public clinics once, but the wait list. Catherine got worse every day. The girls cried seeing their mother waste away, and I couldn't handle it. So you started drinking. Robert nodded, tears freely flowing now. The booze numbed the pain, you know. Made me forget for a few hours that I was failing as a husband, as a father. But I needed more and more the money that should have gone to her treatment. His voice broke, and he covered his face with his hands. James waited, letting the moment run its course. When Robert spoke again, his voice was shattered. One night, Catherine had a severe crisis. The girls, so little, tried to help her while I was too drunk to do anything. By the time we got to the hospital, it was too late. And after that, Robert laughed bitterly. After that, I gave myself entirely to the bottle. We lost the house, I lost the last of my job, the girls, God, my girls, I blamed them, you know, for needing care, for reminding me of her. James felt his own throat tighten. They blame themselves too. They think that if they'd been better, if they'd gotten more money when begging on the streets, you wouldn't have been so angry. The force of those words struck Robert like a physical blow. He bent over the table, sobs now racking his body. What did I do? My God, what did I do to my daughters? For several minutes, only the sound of his crying filled the room. James waited, thinking of the twins sleeping in his home, how they still called out for their mother at night, how they trembled at raised voices. Are they okay? Robert finally asked, his voice rough, finally. At your house, and are they safe? They're recovering, James answered honestly. Therapy helps. They still have nightmares, still startle easily, but they're beginning to act like children again. Emma's back to drawing. Emily sings softly when she thinks no one's listening. Robert nodded slowly, looking at the pictures again. Catherine always sang them lullabies, the same songs every night. The custody hearing is tomorrow, James said gently. I came because I wanted you to know. I'm not trying to steal your daughters. I'm trying to give them a chance to be children again. And me? Robert's voice was small, almost childlike. Will I never see them again? That depends on you. James leaned forward. There are rehab programs, therapy, support groups. If you truly want to change, to be in their lives in a healthy way, I'll support that. But it has to be your choice, Robert. Your fight. Another silence ensued, but this one felt different, more reflective, less charged. Robert stared at the photos as if they contained the answers he was seeking. Do they still talk about me? They talk about the father you were, James replied gently. The father who played hide and seek, who used funny voices when reading stories, who took them on the swings at the park. That father still exists somewhere inside you, Robert. But you have to want to find him again. Robert slowly slid the photos back to James, except one, the one of him holding the newborn twins. Can I keep this? James nodded. The guard signaled that time was up. Before leaving, James pulled out something else from his pocket. 2 drawings the twins had made in therapy. They asked me to give you these, he said, placing the papers on the table. I think that, even after everything, there's still love there. It's up to you to decide if you deserve it. Robert picked up the drawings with trembling hands. In one, Emma had drawn the whole family, him, Catherine, the twins, all holding hands under a smiling sun. In the other, Emily had drawn only him, sitting in a chair, reading a story to 2 smiling little girls. I can change, Robert murmured, more to himself than to James. For them, I need to change for them. James stood up, adjusting his jacket. It's your choice, Robert. Tomorrow, in court, I'll do whatever is necessary to protect Emma and Emily. But your role in their lives doesn't have to end here. It can be a new beginning if you're willing to do the hard work. As James left the visitation room, the midday sun cast long shadows through the barred windows. In his pocket, his phone vibrated with a message from the housekeeper. The girls just finished their therapy session. They're asking about you. On the other side of the metal door, Robert Thompson clutched his daughter's drawings to his chest, years of regret and lost possibilities weighing on his shoulders. Somewhere between the past he couldn't change and the future still to come, a small seed of hope began to sprout. The custody hearing was tomorrow. And with it, the fate of two little girls with jade green eyes would be decided. But for today, in that cold visitation room, a father had taken the first step toward redemption. The family court felt even more imposing on that autumn morning. James adjusted his tie for the 10th time, watching Emma and Emily in the reflection of the window. The twins sat quietly on a wooden bench, their hands intertwined as always, wearing the blue dresses they had chosen especially for that day. "All rise," announced the bailiff. "Presiding is the Honorable Judge Margaret Dixon." Judge Dixon looked exactly like the photos James had studied. A woman in her 60s, grey hair in a tight bun, sharp eyes behind gold-framed glasses. Her track record in custody cases was known for being thorough, sometimes mercilessly so. "Case number 2749-2025, she began, her clear voice filling the courtroom. "Regarding custody of minors Emma and Emily Thompson, I see we have an unusual situation here." James felt the twins move closer to him. Ever since they'd woken up that morning, they hadn't left his side for more than a few inches. The fear of being separated showed in their identical green eyes, just like their mothers in the photos now included in the evidence. "Your Honor," Richard Bennett, James's attorney, stood. "I'd like to start by presenting the reports from the multidisciplinary team working with the girls." "One moment," the judge interrupted, adjusting her glasses. "First, I want to hear from the biological father, Mr. Thompson." Robert rose from his chair, still wearing the detention uniform. 2 weeks of sobriety had changed his appearance. He was thinner, more focused, his eyes no longer clouded by alcohol. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse with emotion. "Your Honor, I prepared a speech, spent all night writing it, trying to explain, but now, looking at my daughters." He paused, swallowing hard. "All I can think about is how badly I hurt them." A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. The twins instinctively leaned closer to James, who placed his hands protectively on their shoulders. "I used to be a good dad," Robert continued, tears streaming freely now. "I had a happy family, a wonderful wife. When Catherine got sick, I lost myself. Drinking seemed like the only way out, but it just led me deeper, and I dragged my daughters down with me." Judge Dixon watched him closely, her expression unreadable. Robert pulled out something from his pocket, the drawings the twins had sent him in prison. "They still remember that, Dad," his voice broke. "They still draw him, still believe he exists somewhere. Maybe he does. But not right now, not the way I am now." Turning to James, Robert went on. "When Mr. Carter showed up in that park, I hated him because he could give my daughters everything I couldn't. But now," he glanced at the twins, who were watching him with a mixture of fear and hope. "Now I understand that love isn't about possession. It's about wanting what's best for them." "Mr. Thompson," the judge interjected softly, "are you saying you're relinquishing custody?" "I'm saying I want a chance to make amends," Robert answered, wiping his tears. "Not as their guardian. I lost that right when I chose the bottle over their well-being. But maybe one day, when I'm better, when I prove I've really changed, maybe I can be part of their lives again. The right way this time." Judge Dixon jotted down some notes before turning to James. "Mr. Carter, a single man of 28, a billionaire CEO, with no prior experience raising children. Why should we entrust two traumatized girls to you?" James felt Emma and Emily tense beside him. He gently squeezed their shoulders reassuringly before standing. "Your Honor, in the last 2 months, I've learned more about love and family than in my entire life up to that point," he began, his voice steady but warm. "I've learned that family isn't about blood ties or legal documents. It's about being present, about making tough choices for someone else's good, about unconditional love." He picked up a file from his case. "I've restructured my company so I can work mostly from home. I've hired top professionals to help the girls recover. I've reorganized my entire life because," he looked at the twins, tears welling in his eyes, "they've become my entire life. Have the girls expressed any preference? The judge asked, though the bond between them was apparent to everyone in the room. Emily, she called gently. Would you like to say something? The twins rose slowly, still holding hands. Emily, normally the quieter one, he spoke first. Uncle James, and he makes us not be scared anymore. He reads us stories every night, Emma added. And he doesn't get mad when we have nightmares. He leaves the hallway light on, and there's always food in the fridge. And he promises things and does them. And Emily hesitated, glancing at her dad before continuing. And he said that one day, when Dad gets better, we can see him again. If we want to. Judge Dixon removed her glasses, cleaning them methodically, while she processed everything she'd heard. The silence in the courtroom was palpable. I have here, she finally said, some impressive reports from the therapy team. The girls have shown significant improvement in just 2 months. Mr. Carter has demonstrated not only financial commitment, but emotional investment. And Mr. Thompson, she looked at Robert, has shown a rare and courageous willingness to acknowledge his limitations. Putting her glasses back on, she continued, in 15 years of presiding over custody cases, I've learned that sometimes the best families are the ones we choose to create, not necessarily the ones we're born into. James felt his heart pound. The twin squeezed his hands tighter. It is the ruling of this court, Judge Dixon pronounced formally, to grant permanent custody of Emma and Emily Thompson to Mr. James Carter, with the right to eventual adoption should you all wish in the future. The collective sigh of relief was audible. The twins immediately threw themselves into James's arms, and he held them tight, silent tears running down his face. As for Mr. Thompson, the judge went on, your admission and desire to change are commendable. The court strongly recommends continued rehabilitation. After 6 months of verified sobriety and consistent therapy, we can revisit the possibility of supervised visits, if that's what the girls want. Robert nodded, tears in his eyes as well. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll prove I can change. When the session ended, James remained seated for a moment, the twins still clinging to him. Emma and Emily, his little warriors, had survived the impossible and still kept the ability to love and trust. Shall we go home? He asked gently. Forever, Emily asked, her green eyes shining with hope. Forever, James confirmed. Before they left, Robert approached hesitantly. Mr. Carter, thank you for taking care of them, for giving them the chance I couldn't. Take care of yourself, Robert, James replied softly. They'll need their father someday, the father you used to be, who you can be again. The twins looked at their father, a mix of emotions on their young faces. Robert didn't try to come closer, respecting their space and fear. I love you, he said simply, and I promise I'll get better, for real this time. The afternoon sun streamed through the high windows of the courthouse as James exited with his daughters, now officially his daughters, Emma and Emily, each holding one of his hands, trusting that they had finally found their place in the world. And somewhere between the past they could not change, and the future now opening before them. 3 broken hearts began to heal, forming a family destiny had woven in the most unlikely of places, on a random autumn afternoon, in front of an abandoned amusement park.